Hi, everybody. Great to have you back for week 4 of the Ready to Roll Initiatives webinars. After today, we will have 2 more webinars. Next week, July 22nd, our subject will be all things locations. And our last webinar will center around vanities, and it will also include a vendor spotlight. Please help spread the word. After live broadcast, webinars are archived on DC Camera's YouTube channel. We are also conducting departmental Zoom meetings, which are also held on Wednesdays from 1:30 to 2:30 p.m. Zoom meetings are open discussions with a department-specific moderator. Links are on the DC Camera and Surviving the DMV Film Shutdown Facebook pages. Today's Zoom meeting is with production. We invite everyone to join in because every one of us interacts with production. Nancy Swetton will be moderating. Thanks, Nancy, for jumping in. Today's discussion, Ask the Producers. Today's discussion is Ask the Producers. Before we get to our guest, I would like to introduce today's moderator. Who better to lead a discussion with producers than Mary Holland? Mary is no stranger to many of us. Although now recently retired, Mary has been in film production for 40 years. 20 of those were spent as a production company producer and executive producer of Bonner Films in Baltimore with director Lee Bonner. 15 as a freelance agency producer and 5 as a post-production producer. She has handled everything from feature films and docs to short films and commercials. While always based in Baltimore, her projects have taken her often to New York and Los Angeles, and to just about every state in the US, as well as Canada, Brussels, South Africa, Italy, and London. We are thrilled to have today's guests today. So ladies first, Lindsay Thomas started her film career as a casting director for feature films and commercials at Central Casting in both the Baltimore and DC locations. In 1990, she started freelancing as a production manager and line producer. For six years, Lindsay teamed up with David Butler as Butler Films executive producer. In 2008, Lindsay started Lulu Productions, which is MBE, DBE, and SBA certified. She lives in Annapolis with her 2 sons. Liz Norton, who's not on yet, but she will be, started her career in production in the DC Baltimore market. She moved to Los Angeles and continued to work in freelance commercial production for a few years before taking a role as an in-house agency producer. Liz started at 3Cs 7 years ago, which combines production and agency experience supporting, supporting those clients as a vendor. She was promoted to the executive producer role at 3Cs in 2017. Hi, John.
Hi, John.
Hi, John.
3Cs in 2017, where her primary job is now guiding her team of producers to make clients as happy as possible and their projects as creative as possible. With more than 15 years of agency and independent production experience to his credit, Brian Hegedus brings a comprehensive approach to creative and production challenges. For the last decade, commercial and television production has been Brian's focus. Brian has worked in the fast-paced environment of reality TV, assistant directing for HGTV, the Sundance Channel, in addition to programs for True TV and TLC. In the last 6 election cycles, Brian worked on campaigns for President Obama, Senator Harry Reid, Claire McCaskill, and Kristen Gillibrand, and the presidential campaign for Hillary Clinton and the Senate campaign for Chris Van Hollen. Additionally, Brian has produced promos for MSNBC, NBC, CNN, and the first 4 seasons of promos for HBO Veep when it was filmed in DC. In 2018, Brian established Production Arts to enable him to harness his experience and extensive stable of production resources, a full service production company. He is currently working on political shoots for various Senate and congressional candidates. Both Mary and I welcome back to Maryland, our friend John Noble. Hi, John. John has been involved in production since he was a senior in high school, working on Volkswagen shoots as a free PA. His agency career started in New York City with McCann Ericson, then to Baltimore with Smith, Burke and Zahm, which is now GKV. In 1996, he began a successful 8-year stretch at the Martin Agency, which led to his promotion to Director of Production. He is credited for turning an award-winning print shop into a TV powerhouse. In 2003, John became Director of Production of the single largest startup agency in advertising history when he joined Element 79 Partners in Chicago. In 2008, John jumped the fence and began a successful 7-year run managing production companies such as One at Optimus, Eyeball, and the Traveling Picture Show Company in Los Angeles. John's vast experience producing and managing from both sides of the business gives him a unique and valuable insight into literally every facet of the production process. He now co-owns Fixer Partners, a remote, full-based production department servicing both brands and agency. He now brings his production expertise, his tried and true managerial skills, and his extensive industry relationships to the Fixer Partners team. Among his clients, Gatorade, Geico, UPS, Coke, Budweiser, and Mercedes-Benz. Thanks everyone for taking time out of your busy schedule to be part of this roundtable, and I'm gonna pass the discussion on to Mary.
Okay, thanks Caprice. Good morning everyone. Last week, the webinar topic was how we did it and showed how certain current productions were handled to ensure COVID safety. It was filled with lots of helpful information. And today, our panel of producers pick up where they left off. To date, our webinars have covered safety and disinfection and how producers have been handling their shoots during the pandemic. What's left, I think, for us today are some big picture questions. But first, I'd like to just kind of catch up with you all. Liz, hi, you joined us a little late. Everything okay?
Yes, sorry, I was joined as a participant, so I was like talking, and so that was, I thought I was going to mess something up from off the bat, but yes, I figured it out just in the nick of the time. Sorry about that.
So you just did a Zoom shoot, and I'm just curious about how that went. You know, I mean, did you use a crew? Did you send a lighting package there or anything?
We didn't really. So we had done a couple of different tests with different software. Zoom worked best, and we used Zoom to do our interviews. It was a testimonial shoot, and we also wanted to capture some B-roll as part of it. So we did a couple of different tests with different softwares. Zoom looked the best and sounded the best, and we used a third-party application to record it rather than the Zoom record. And then the only thing that we did in a like somewhat—
So did you send a microphone to
Nope.
Okay.
Nope,
Right.
we didn't. We just sort of, and we certainly set expectations with clients up front about what to expect in terms of quality of audio and video and what we would get. And that was sort of, they were trying to lean into that look and feel. We did do a casting with Carlin Davis, and we worked with them to cast via headshots. But what was interesting is we were also casting talent that was going to be in their own home. So we wanted, you know, we're using their bedroom as the set. We're using, you know, these things are all kind of things that we were doing in a super non-traditional way by kind of having folks photograph their living space and casting people not only based on who they are and what they look like, but where they lived, and use their computers to shoot and use their cell phones to shoot. So
yeah, I think we're going to be telling talents to, like, do you have good looking kids? Is your wife good looking? Can we like package you as a family?
Yeah, and I had to tell our director, like, this kid I'm not paying for, so don't, you know, he can't come in, but this kid, yeah, you know. And so we tried to manage it that way. So it was certainly interesting, but we were able to do some things in a somewhat traditional way, like casting, but we were asking more of our talent, I would say, and more of our director. I mean, he had no DP and no crew really to lean on, and I think it put a lot of pressure to get the content that we were looking for on his shoulders, for sure.
And Brian, you're out in Vegas, right? On a political shoot? How
And so I'm doing everything from here until I need to be elsewhere. And basically we're ended up using Zoom. It was interesting hearing Liz talk about this. We looked at primarily BlueJean and Zoom in terms of the platform, and Zoom for our, we're working with candidates. So they're not working in a traditional fashion, and we needed to make it simple, and Zoom kept coming up for them as the easiest thing for them to do. This is early on. This is when we were literally having them sitting at their coffee table or at their kitchen table doing this, and trying to help them. Sending photos back and forth, setting up lighting, making that work for them. We looked at BlueJean, and that it was an interesting thing where that particular platform takes over the user's computer, so you can actually adjust their camera, etc. The only problem with it, if you use their recording capability, is it records natively to whatever the device is. So you're limited by memory in their device, and then it has to be uploaded. And we also don't necessarily want our footage located someplace else where we have no control over it. So we ended up back with Zoom. And, early on with Zoom, there were security issues that they've addressed, a number of them, but very early on, you didn't even have a password. And so you would have people coming in. But it is interesting now in terms of, and I know you're going to do locations on the next webinar, but as Liz was saying, we're like talking to people out, well, where are you? And all these things that they never had to worry about, or we never considered. We're just in the process now. We've been basically doing a lot of Zoom. We have a particular client, we're doing Zoom shoots all the time. And these are just testimonials. These are not actors, they're volunteering their time. So you also have to be careful of how much you can demand. It's like, hi, can you move that lamp over there? And they're like, what are you talking about? But everyone.
I feel like a lot of our shoots, John, don't you think like a lot of our shoots now are these kind of testimonials? They're smaller crews. They are, we're not seeing much creative, I don't think, that's being tailored for traditional production, that the kind of production we're used to, right?
Yeah, no, it's desperate times, and the work is showing that. And one of the things that, Brian, I know it's not like you were dealing with political candidates. What we're finding out is talent now, when can be mostly SAG, but if it's non-SAG too, they charge an extra fee, which is something we've got to all think about. They will charge an extra fee. You send a camera kit to their house, they're going to charge an extra fee to receive that camera kit, open it, set it up. This is, for total remote shoots, and do what they're, your unions, especially SAG, is saying, hey, you're asking them to be literally their own director, setting up their house, giving their location. Those fees are Wild West right now because no one is really nailing it down, but I've seen at least 25% additional fee to that. So a big part of this thing, and Mary, we can get into this whenever you guys all want to chat about, but it's like, who's going to pay for all this? There's a lot of extra costs here that clients, my clients at least, are not all willing to pay and not all willing to go.
But that is one of the big elephants in the room that I think is worth us discussing. Nobody really has answers, but I am curious. You all are probably in the process of bidding jobs. All my life, I got pushback from clients saying, well, this is how much money we have. You figure out how to spend it. Okay, I know you've got like COVID safety concerns, but that's kind of your problem. I'm giving you an extra 15% or whatever. You figure out how you make everybody safe. I don't know if that's the case. I'm just curious as to what conversations you're having with your clients as you're bidding jobs, what kind of jobs you're getting. Are they willing to tailor creative based on what you're saying, or are they pushing back? So John, why don't you start us off and everybody can weigh in.
Yeah, I will just say real quickly that our clients are all over the map. Some are very concerned and some are very understanding of the situation. And then they've got other ones, like you said, Mary, just like, look, you handle it. This is your money. This is your deal. They're respectful. I'm not saying they're Republican or anything like that, but they're just they want you to handle the problem, okay? And it's understood because they're paying the bill. I mean, but I'm also finding like, this is going to be this much. I mean, production can be now with the pre-production being so intense now, as we all have been through this, right? It's a lot more pre-production going on now. That's time and money, and that's it can be up to 30 to 40% more. My clients aren't buying it right now, and I'm having trouble with that. Curious to hear what the rest of you guys are dealing with.
How about you, Lindsay? You're bidding some jobs, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm bidding a couple jobs right now, and also I had the one little tiny job about a month ago, which was quite small but doable, under 10 people, client, talent, crew included. And I mean, it was so small. I mean, we had minimal extra costs due to COVID, but they were in there and they readily paid for that without question. As far as bidding goes right now, the conversations I've had with my couple clients currently are, let us know what it is. And then we'll go back and see if we really want to shoot now or wait. One of the clients definitely has plenty of spots that could be repurposed. And/or there's talk of repurposing some shots and going to animation. But they're asking me to estimate what it will be to go ahead and shoot, say, in a month. And I'm finding more prep, more wrap, and certainly costs for supplies, somewhere 30% more.
So is the client's creative more about, well, should we solve this problem with animation? Should we solve this problem with stock footage? Or are they actually talking to you guys about how can we shoot this? How can we take this new creative we have that we wanted to do? How can we do it under these new restrictions? Is anybody asking you to be that much of a creative partner?
Not yet, not for me.
I've had reach outs from creative directors at agencies way earlier in the process than I would have normally heard from them, to say, hey, look, we have this idea. We want to pitch it to our client, but I don't want to pitch it to them unless we can do it. What do you think? And so having to sort of pre-bid ideas that aren't even fully fleshed out, just to sort of say like, well, hey, we could do it this way, but if you want to build all these sets, we would need a larger art department. If we need a larger art department, are we going to be over 10 people? And how would you feel about that? And how would your client feel about that? How would you feel about supervising the shoot via Zoom as opposed to being there in person? So we limit the number of people on a soundstage and those kinds of things. So I have had a couple of folks call me about stuff that's just like down the line, because I think they're trying to present things in a responsible way. But I think that does also mean that there's efforts made to try to keep the crews smaller, and try to keep it so that things are possible and that they're presenting ideas that are possible.
Well, Liz, and I think you too, John, you're in a position where you're attached to a post house. You offer a whole soup to nuts package for a client. Have you found that they are coming to you with more animation, more stock footage, just wanting voiceovers? And
sure, yeah.
I think we need to be honest for everybody. This has been very crew motivated, and I have I have a lot of encouragement for crews built into this, believe it or not. But I think we need to be honest about what work we're seeing right now.
Yeah, our animators are very busy. Our colorists, not so much, right? Because no one's been out shooting anything. There's nothing to, we're reusing old footage, we're utilizing stock, we're revising old spots with, voiceover changes and animation instead of something that would have in past been a new piece. And we're also seeing a lot of things put on hold because stuff that was in the pipeline for us before, back in March and April and those kinds of things, clients are holding on to that creative because they're not sure if it's the appropriate time to release these new spots or what their messaging should be. in this moment. So, you know, we're seeing things that we were supposed to do now that are like, that's probably going to be Q4, and just kind of pushing. But yeah, certainly a lot of ideas are skewing to be animated for sure.
I'm curious, on one of our first webinars, a producer said that she was having her clients sign a contract before the job that said that they would agree to wear masks and social distance and, you know, take care of a couple of those things up front with the client. Have any of you done that with clients yet?
I'm actually, we had it having a discussion yesterday because it's interesting from the client perspective that they're, you know, we're doing everything for the crew and making the set safe, and they somehow extract themselves from that equation. And I'm like, if you're on set, we have to do all the same screening and you have to wear that. I mean, and then we haven't had anything egregious happen, but it's like all of that same screening that everyone goes through, you have to go through as well. It's a funny thing where they're like, well, we're running this, we're paying for it, you know, they look at me and go, all right, you go do this, right? And I have to say, well, you're part of this now too. You know, because in many ways, it's like John said earlier, it's like, we're giving you this money, you go deal with it. And there is that mindset where they're like, okay, I've hired you, you're gonna handle the problem. And they forget that they're part of this equation now. You know, I'm in a unique thing. If this had happened, if this was last year, and I was having like Hungry Man or any number of production companies come in, for many of those, I would get a Bible of their procedures already before they even come to me. This year, I had to write the Bible because I'm doing all of that and having to work with the clients and have them part of that. You know, it was all those discussions that you just talked about. What's the creative look like? What can you do? You know, Liz was just saying the amount of time that we've spent, not even pre-pro on a certain shoot, pre-pro for all the shoots. I mean, I'm spending a ton of time just kind of trying to figure out, you know, various silos of kinds of shoots. And Rarish will, you know, be in the same position. You know, people are pushing things off to Q4. In the political sphere, we don't have a Q4. There's going to come a time where it is either not going to happen, and everyone says it's going to happen, but we're just going to get crammed with all of this work. And you know, we're starting to do stuff now. Yesterday, I just got 6 shoots thrown at me. Now, some of them will be Zoom, some will not be Zoom. But the amount of pre-pro going in and talking to crews, making sure they understand the process. You know, I'm doing a thing where my survey is you have to sign your health survey and for temperature screening and all of that, so that we can go back and say, you know, we have actually done what we need to do, but it takes time. And we were talking about budgets. You know, we have these increased costs, yet the clients are like, but my crew is so much smaller. And I'm like, well, it takes a lot to keep them safe. And just the time, you know, and even travel, you know, we worried about, if we were flying a DP around, do we need to quarantine them just for our sense of safety? We have someone on our crew that's very, you know, concerned about this, and it takes a lot more time, a lot more money, even though you may have 9 people on set, not including talent. And that's the other thing you have to say to them, you know, we have 10 people. That includes all of your talent and only one set at a time. So we're staggering. If we have multiple talent, they can only be on set for this period of time, and that must clear before you bring someone else on. And it's a process for them in terms of the amount of time and getting them to sign off on that and be part of that.
I'm curious about the travel aspect you just brought up, Brian, because I'm curious as to whether or not clients are going to be traveling to shoots. Are they going to be just faces on a monitor from here on out? I'm kind of tailoring my question based on, you know, in the back of our minds, we really want to try to bring production to our area. And I just don't know what is involved with that. I don't know if clients are looking outside of their area to travel, or, you know, or if it doesn't matter to them now where the shoot is because they're just going to be on a screen like we are looking at things. What do you think? Are your clients like there with you all the time?
We have to travel. I mean, you know, so I know, and I don't know whether John was involved with this. I know the Gatorade shoot that was maybe a month ago, and the DP, the producer, I'm trying to think who, and the director were all remote. I think that is going to happen a lot more. If we were a month ago, I think when everybody thought things were kind of leveling out, before we had the spikes in all the states, and all the states are reopening, and all the logistic issues of each location were seemingly leveling out, I think people were like, okay, we're going to go back out. Well, when that all changed in the last 2 to 3 weeks, I think you're going to see more of the directors, the DPs who don't want to travel that much, who are going to do a Zoom shoot, you know, but within that, realizing the limitations that that puts on them creatively. I mean, you know, just a simple move with the camera and how you're, you know, how are you going around getting different locations? I think those people that have to travel a lot are not going to. You're going to get a lot more local crews. You're going to get, you know, we're going to use production supervisors in a way that I would have normally gone out and done that, but I'm going to hire a local production supervisor to handle those things that I can't handle on set. I mean, and in a weird way, I mean, you know, you're going to see some airfare costs go down, but certainly all the protection and all the safety on set will go up. I don't think you're going to see no one's going to save money during this. I mean, that is not going to happen.
Yeah, I asked Caprice to post a piece I got sent to me yesterday, which was interesting. It's a small shoot in LA, and it's a whole breakdown of how they handled it. I hope people will kind of take a look at some of the things we post in addition to this webinar today. And this line producer tested everybody before the shoot. Everybody got a test before the shoot. Everybody tested negative. They proceeded. You're talking about people flying into a shoot. The producer on this thing does give some costs, give some information about how fast you can turn around tests. I am surprised that producers so far have not been making arrangements with pathologists at hospitals or health officials to kind of expedite testing and get something set up. You know, everything seems to be geared for prevention on the set, which is great. But how do you feel? Are you all going to test? Are you going to test your crews? Are you going to take a chance that you're midway through a production and something is going wrong? What do you think, John?
I mean, try to get a hold of a medical professional right now for your needs, and you could waste a month. That's where we're running into, like, you know, I just don't go down that road, because also the news changes every other day, right? So we're just, you know, we as producers want to be like smart with our time. And so I haven't gone down that road because I hope to be optimistic, but I'm also, you know, realistic. But I think that the testing thing is like, yeah, we definitely test before we shoot. All our clients, you were going back, all our clients have not traveled. None of them have traveled. They're all, and I think that's going to be a trend for a while. So I think, you know, that remote video village is a thing for sure. Whether we as producers will actually be on set or not, that'll depend on, you know, I don't think anything's happening right now, quite frankly. I mean, I've had 2 or 3 shoots just get moved, and Q4 seems to be like the repetitive Q4. I don't even know if we're going to get, like, for us, we try to do our business plan for the year. I don't even know if we're going to get those in. I can't tell you. So, but one other thing I was going to say is about clients. Their budgets for this year were done in 2019, right? So they have no contingency plans. No one ever thought this was coming. It's not their, you know, no one could. I mean, so there's no extra dollars anywhere. So that, like, when you keep saying, where's this dollars coming from? They're being squeezed. They're gonna have to change. They're changing what the amount of messaging they're doing. And oh my God, I got to add 30% to this budget. That's a lot to them, obviously. And so they're very. I'm finding like it's not that money was ever free, you know, going freely, but it's not. I think it's really hard for me, at least, to get a client to agree to a budget these days that I have full safety procedures in there, and I feel very safe as a producer, and that we're covered under proper insurances and whatnot. So that is a challenge. I think states like Maryland, for instance, if your state is trending downward, you got a good chance. I mean, that looks good. I'm in Connecticut right now, And there's a lot of call because Connecticut's one of the model states right now. And so normally not a shooting state, but there's a lot of production being questioned, you know, can we shoot there? So.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Maryland does have an advantage if our numbers keep going down, and we do have an excellent cost base on all of that. So that's a smart thing. I think one of the things that, and I've also posted this, one of the pieces that I received was from Entertainment Partners. Caprice turned me on to it, you know. And it was pretty heartening about production. It's like, I really think you guys would find it really, really interesting. I'm going to read you like some of what they did. They said, we globally experienced several years of tremendous growth and a huge desire for content. The COVID shutdown, according to a survey of film commissions, resulted in a loss of $145 billion in economic impact over the first 6 months of 2020. However, unlike other areas of the economy whose recovery could take years, screen production has many attributes that give it a leading position in stimulating recovery. Production can pump a lot of cash and jobs into an area with a relatively quick decision. Now, we heard last week that that production in New York was pretty challenging these days. And we do have a good cost base here in Maryland. And if our numbers, like John says, if we can keep our numbers down by practicing all this COVID safety on the set, I think this makes for an ideal time for us to take the lead in maybe economic recovery. I know that sounds like very Pollyanna, but we could play a pivotal role in changing the recovery for our state and maybe lay some groundwork for future tax incentives, you know?
I mean, the state right now that does the tax incentive thing is gonna raw. It's just, I mean, if, you know, like you said, if Maryland trends down and they had a tax incentive, I would be very positive. I could not see that. I mean, it would work out really well for the state, whoever does that. We know it, you know, Georgia and Louisiana and states like that already have them in place, but
and Maryland Maryland has always had a battle for incentives, but one of the things, hold on, Caprice, one of the things that I think is important is we could conceivably, I mean, some of the countries as part of COVID measures are offering like incentives on your COVID overruns. Like if you're encountering costs based on COVID and delays, those costs will be eligible for a special incentive. And France is offering, the state is underwriting insurance for shoots because of COVID. So, because Lindsay and I will talk about insurance in a minute, insurance for these shoots, because we still have to discuss what will happen if something does happen on a shoot. So I'm sorry, Caprice, what were you going to say?
John, can you give us the distinction? Because I think especially us here in Maryland, when we hear incentives, it's more about long format, feature film, and episodic. So we're kind of talking TV commercials because honestly, that is our bread and butter here, is that we have a lot of local production TV commercials, and we do get a lot of big brands in. So what would bring you here? And in addition to low numbers, having a crew base, having wonderful locations, what would these incentives look like to entice you to come here?
Yeah, I mean, it would be like probably a typical state tax incentive that, you know, Georgia or wherever one of the states have, you know, they're 15, 20% on a $250,000 spend or something like that. But I love Maryland because, and I would shoot there a lot more because I used to live in Maryland and I used to know how great it was to travel town on the train down, boom. Well, we'll figure that out when the trains are running. But I think that what a terrific area, the, you know, Delmarva area, all that, and DC and all the access to all that. I would go there for sure if there was incentive. Like, you know, Illinois is great. Chicago, because I shoot a lot in Chicago because the talent is there, not so much the locations and stuff, but the talent from Second City and things like that. We use a lot of comedic actors and that. But having access to New York, I think, is a great thing for Maryland.
Yeah, yeah, it was, and New York was very interested in opening up our area, but we never were able to really parlay that for years. So maybe COVID is in a strange way a backward opportunity for us to become a fair-haired child of the New York production community.
But also, I just want to add too is that, you know, and it has happened for several years, but I'll just reference 2019. We had a lot of big brands come in here. We had the huge John Deere spot. We had Land's End. We had a lot of major production, commercial production here. They do love the crew. Again, they cast in New York. You know, the agencies, if they're in New York, have come down. They love the locations. And I think we just need to keep that rocking. And that's why, you know, I'm bringing this up. But anyway.
Yeah. So let's revisit this. All right, we're on a set, we're on a shoot, and just hypothetically, we get that call the night before, say, our second day of the shoot. You know, somebody has lost their sense of taste or smell. Now, Lindsay, you've talked to your insurance company about COVID-related costs, and what did you find out?
So my insurance, first of all, the job that I did a month ago was not my production company. It was a freelance job for me. And they made the call to their insurance company and they said, you know, we don't cover COVID. We don't cover viruses. We don't cover bacterial things. It's just straight up, as always, production insurance across the board. So I, in anticipation of this call and also bidding the couple jobs that I'm bidding, I've talked to my insurance company and same exact feedback. There's, in their opinion, there's no additional coverage for COVID. I don't know what anybody else, John, anybody else with production company has encountered, but that's the feedback from my end.
Yeah.
What we've been discussing this, and of course, if you're using a paymaster, workers' comp essentially kicks in. I've asked the paymaster we're using this year, have they gotten any guidelines? And their insurance companies provided no additional information. It would be the first line of, the first in line if there was something to happen. Now, and the policy that we have, which was just renewed, we do have personal injury, but we're still in the process of getting something specific around COVID. But I will also say one of the things that we're looking at is in this next stimulus, there is language, there's a bill being put forth to cap COVID injury liabilities for all employers. And there are 4 states that have put this in place. Of course, if you're not shooting in that state or you're not located in that state, it doesn't really do you any good. So a national cap is under discussion and would help us in a lot of these areas where it would limit liability, and then insurance companies could then respond in kind. But we're kind of in this bit of this waiting period. Potentially, this bill is supposed to come forward at either at the end of this month or the beginning of August. But it is something we need to look at, because that's why, you know, until that happens, insurance companies like us on all of these topics are kind of waiting for something to happen. And, you know, like we say, we're pushing off the 4. Well, insurance companies are pushing off till there's a national cap on liabilities. Hopefully that'll happen sooner than later. And it was interesting because we were just talking about testing. I mean, there are a number of downfalls to testing. One, you know, when we're looking at movies who can take their crew and quarantine them for, you know, test them, quarantine them for 2 weeks, we know that the real-time testing, which is the immediate testing, still is quite frankly not very accurate. And if you don't have the ability to quarantine people for the period of time, Quest is now saying it takes 7 days to return a test. The reality of testing becomes very difficult. In addition, if you as a production company are then testing, and let's say you do a real-time test, there's either a false positive or false negative, which leads a crew member to to do certain behaviors, like, there's some liability there. We have made the decision not to test, just simply for logistics, and just even trying to get people through the process. Unless you can unless you have the budget and can quarantine those people from the period of time that they take the test, it's not very effective anyway, and quite frankly may open you up to liability, which is why I think almost everybody's going down to the survey, following the CDC guidelines. And as Mary just said, the person calls, I lost my sense of smell, or this morning I'm running a fever of 100.5. In terms of insurance, all of those things factor into the insurance, and your companies are going to tell you, these are the things you need to do. They're not even telling us. They're just kind of like hands off.
They're not going to pay for those things.
Right.
So what do? You call your client and say, what, we have to shut down our shoot and have everybody tested? Or this guy was in a zone, he only interacted with the assistant cameraman, so we're gonna.
If you're on a bigger multi-day shoot, it becomes more difficult. A single day shoot, quite frankly, that by the time you're getting that information, you're then you've already put it in the can, and then you're going back to your people and telling everybody this is what happened. Everyone needs to go and get tested. Some people can go to their doctor and get tested more quickly than we can. I know myself, I've been through 2 COVID tests that I had to schedule independently on my own. And I know the last one was, I waited almost 8 days to get my results back. When you're in these multi-day shoots, that's why the procedures, the white paper that went out was saying, if you're going to do a movie, and I think Jurassic Park had this happen, where one of their crew members, like very early in the process, they did all their testing. One person came up positive. Now they had quarantined, and they were able to, at least they believe, kind of keep that capped. But that whole process, and then having insurance companies say, you've got to follow these procedures. We document everything we're doing now because we just don't know what we're going to get asked. And we don't know when insurance companies are going to move off the dime. I don't personally know anyone that's tested these boundaries. I don't know anyone who's had something come up, a claim related to COVID yet. But I imagine it's happening right now with LA opening production. I can't imagine that there's not going to be something happening very quickly, particularly since their numbers have spiked. But if you're in a large enough production and you're able to quarantine and have some confidence in your testing, that's how you move forward. But we're still, quite frankly, from an insurance perspective and a liability perspective, it's a bit of the Wild West until there's some laws put in place that then trickle on down in terms of all of us being able to say, okay, we're limited to this much liability. Your insurance company then writes a policy that covers it, and then you go forward with certainty. We don't have certainty yet. This discussion is very much about it. We're all kind of, people are tuning in, or we're polling each other saying, what are you doing? And the thing we're doing is establishing best practices, because there is no firm guideline yet on what will absolutely happen. For instance, for me, we're now, when we're booking a day, we're booking quote unquote a rain day in case someone comes up positive, so that I can reconstitute the crew. I'm lucky in that I generally never have, it's rare that I have a 3-day shoot in the political sphere. Mostly it's a 1-day. But again, if I was going, in February, I did a 3-day shoot, it would have been a very different animal a month later, in terms of how we would have done anything. But
so you feel okay about bringing a new crew member into a crew where somebody's tested positive?
That rain day has to be like, not the next day. We have to push that off and start the process all over. And we've had to tell our clients, this is one of those costs. It's like, if we have someone that comes up that we have to push the shoot, anyone on crew, that we find out, this is an additional cost. We may, depending upon when we know this, we may have to pay an entire crew and reschedule.
All right.
And we have to.
And so far your clients have been like,
well, I mean, here's the thing. We're not we're not doing that many shoots. We're keeping it very small. We have not run into this yet. We're prepping it, and no one wants to be, at least on my side, no one wants to be the bad guy and go, oh no, they're all like, okay, we'll see when it happens. We'll literally, and since no one's had an immediate, they're not shooting this week, but as we push things off, like my fourth quarter, if you will, is going to be October, when everything has to happen before the election. If something like that happens, we're going to see where the rubber meets the road. And will these clients actually do what they're saying they're going to do. I can't imagine that it isn't in the back of their mind and they're hesitating on the number of shoots or whether they'll shoot at all. Repurpose B-roll from prior shoots. Do what we talked about, going to animation or things like that, or simply, simply pulling elements from the web. It's interesting, we talked about B-roll in the political sphere. We can't have a 10-year. So we're actually looking for B-roll with people with masks, that reflect the time we're in. And there's not a lot yet, obviously, because of the time. But, we're looking at, are we going to go out and shoot very far away, someone in a mask in a setting so we can assemble this B-roll? We're still trying to figure that all out.
How about you? Have you had conversations with all of your, there are a couple of principals at your company. Have you all discussed what kind of policy you would implement if somebody called in sick on a job?
I mean, sort of like Brian was saying, we haven't had a shoot like that come up and get to the point, like we've discussed it in a preliminary way with clients of like, there would need to be some kind of contingency. We'd need to be communicative about this, but we haven't had that kind of a project come to fruition yet in this moment. I mean, we certainly have guidelines we have 3 different studios where we have people coming in for post-production work. And we have guidelines that we send out to anyone who's coming into a studio about what our expectations are, that they would take a temperature, that they would wear a mask, and lining those out really. And we've had people push back and say, well, I'm not going to wear a mask. And then we can't do that session and we can't have them in. And we haven't had anyone test positive, and we're doing a lot of, when we do have folks in the studios, keeping a real careful log of who's been where, when, and for how long, so that if we have a positive case, that we can trace it and try to let everyone know and try to quarantine folks. And but yeah, in terms of having people on set, we've loosely discussed, ideas of contingencies and how that would work, but it hasn't been an issue. Yeah.
Fair to clients not to have a plan actively on each shoot. I mean, granted, the ground shifts, but at least
Sure.
There ought to be like a plan. What's the thing with waivers? Can anybody enlighten me? Everybody's.
Yeah, I can. No one's going to sign them. A SAG actress said absolutely no one will sign them. IATSE is following SAG's lead, so no one will. We had written a waiver early on in the process, and basically we're told that all the unions are just telling everyone not to sign them. So, and the thing is, even about the waiver, in typical fashion, for a waiver to be enforceable, there needs to be an accommodation, a remuneration over and above the pay grade to make that work. And because even if you do that, there's no certainty that waiver will be enforced by courts. We have decided we're not going to be able to do it at all. And it's just a policy. We're not doing a waiver.
Right. Well, we all know what the unions and SAG have said, but we also have the issue of non-union, which through the Q&A, there's questions. There's been questions on the previous webinars. So let's talk non-union.
Yeah, and let's, how about things from the Q&A? Why don't we just go to it and see what, are any of them asked?
That's one of them. So that's one of them. What
I
about?
just want to know if waivers are happening on non-union shoots.
Well, not just waivers, but how the whole non-union thing's going to work.
In terms of what, Caprice? Not in terms of.
People know that the unions, they're saying not to use waivers and SAG, but we do a lot of non-union jobs here. So,
here's the thing, from a legal perspective, at least what we've been told, that the waiver in particular is not always enforceable. So whether you're doing a union or non-union shoot, it really doesn't matter in terms of the waiver. You're going to come up, a union member may have the backing of the union with regard to not signing it, but a non-union member can have a lawyer and have the same thing happen. So in looking at that, we're going to the same policies in terms of safety, et cetera, we're doing across the board. I'm doing union shoots, but obviously if we had non-union shoots, the waiver I don't want to say unfortunately, but the waiver just isn't going to come up as a viable option in terms of limiting liability for production companies on a non-union shoot anyway. It may initially make people feel a little bit more comfortable, and perhaps, and actually I had this discussion with a payroll service, and they said, well, it's not an awful idea, but it's not like it will guarantee you as a production company of limiting your liability. So, you know, for some who decide to do it, and on non-union shoots where people decide to sign them, that's fine. I don't know that any of us can count on that being a safeguard in limiting liability. You can't. I mean, all the information that I've gotten in doing this research, so it's pretty much a non-starter. I know I won't be putting out waivers for non-union shoots either. And it is interesting though, next year, when a production company comes in and they have their Bible and this is what they do, I'll be interested to see what they have to say around that. But the initial information that I have is that a waiver is quite frankly, a false comfort, if you will, for a production company in terms of protection. You know, so I'm certain everybody else has another opinion, and sorry, don't mean to just jump over.
No, I don't know. John, are you?
I'm not a waiver guy. I'm not going to do that. I wouldn't feel, I've been told by our insurance folks, our legal folks that right now, honestly, any paperwork that's been given, unless it's like a certified large insurance company, which all of them will tell you right now, they hedge bets for a living, right? That's what they do. So they're not going to be turning around some kind of COVID insurance until they've researched the hell out of it and they've hedging their bets. And that's not coming for, I don't know, months and months. It just takes, it's research and data. So I'm turning down work if it's risky. I'm just not going to take my company through that. I mean, we as producers, we can lose a lot by getting caught in a lawsuit for doing something irresponsible. So yeah, I'm not going to do the waiver thing.
So, I mean, do we really, it's very strange. I hear producers kind of talk the talk of like, well, everybody is here as a willing member of the crew, you know, everybody's working as, you know, they're coming in as willing participants. You know, there's kind of this language that kind of seems to couch the liability. Are you saying, John, that you think like that you think an actor or a grip would turn around and sue your company and say you didn't have enough hand washing stations? Or
I mean, I couldn't tell you if it's going to be a crew. I mean, crew people are awesome. They're mostly the coolest people in the world, but I don't know. It could be anybody who just feels, I mean, or it could be a talent. It could be a fellow producer of mine. I don't know. I just try to avoid, right now we're just being pretty safe about how we do our work. We're doing a lot, like you were saying, Mary, we do a lot of animation. You know, we're doing animation, we're doing post. Those houses are doing very well. They're staying very busy, as we all know. But it's not worth it right now for me to take a risk and feel like I'm pressuring someone to sign a waiver as well.
Yeah, but I'm not a big one on false comfort either. I want to say that we've also posted the Safe Sets quick course for COVID safety on this. I think it's all going in the chat. Is it going into the chat column?
I posted, what's in there right now is the Safe Sets International course. It's a free course, and we've been encouraging everyone to take it, including clients. It is just a very good overview. It takes about 30 minutes. It's free. You get a little certificate, doesn't really mean anything, but everybody needs to have this awareness. So we have that. I posted the Moab link, which was a discussion they shot in Moab back.
Yeah, Where Spot did a nice thing on this. Paul Paperneck, you know Paul, John, he was the producer on the job. Yes. And he talks it through in terms of how they handled the shoot. So that's, I think, very interesting, especially for producers. If you haven't seen that, that would be an interesting way.
That link is there. They shot that over Memorial Day weekend, so it's been a bit of time now. Yeah. It was a top secret project. I think it's the new Bronco. So I think we might be able to see the spot. I think they're releasing the Bronco on the 19th. But it does give an overview, and it seemed as though money was no option. It was just like whatever they needed, the client was like, just do it. So they had to do that spot. So that's there. And then, as Mary said, I've been following some webinars on Entertainment Partners, and that link's there too. I think they've archived theirs as well. And then they are constantly having different types of webinars. So that's all.
And that one on the global economy really fascinated me. I wish we could go to our state, you know, I wish we'd go to the governor. I wish we could ask them to help us, because we do represent a really interesting, quick way of bringing the economy back into Maryland. And all we could use is a little boost up in terms of even the cap for employers that you were talking about, Brian. If the state would implement that, so that every employer, every client that came into Maryland knew that there was a cap on their liability.
This is the thing that's happening across the board. John just mentioned it. Like, I wanted to touch base. I've talked to other producers who have refused work when they felt like the client wasn't going to sign on and that it became too risky. It just wasn't worth doing. And I can back that up. But going back to this whole issue of the states, I think at this point, because they know it's being, the first thing is that from an insurance company perspective, it needs to be a federal law so that no matter where you're going, it works. And I think now states are waiting. Everyone's waiting for someone else to make a decision. Everyone's waiting for the numbers to stop spiking. We're pushing it all down. We're kicking the can down the road. The states are waiting for the federal government to put a cap on, because it also helps the states limit their liability as well. So I think that's what's happening right now. I would assume that Hogan is waiting for the federal government, because we've been hearing that it's like in the next few weeks, and the next few weeks are going to get that. And I would imagine that that's what he's waiting on. I mean, at some point, all of us are looking for certainty and making our decisions about how we handle sets, how we handle liability. And, you know, part and parcel of the nature of COVID, and it's changing, and how, because each state has done something differently. You know, if 49 of the states closed down in exactly the same way, but one didn't, that puts at risk everything you do and people traveling. So I think we're all waiting on some sort of level ground. That federal law would obviously help with the liability aspect of it. It may well, quite frankly, make clients, producers more amenable to doing a shoot, where right now they may be hesitating and pushing it off a little bit. I think that will help a lot. Certainly, I mean, I think for Maryland, putting incentives in place with a population and some control over the virus would be great for developing the Maryland production.
And next week, we have the Maryland Film Commission joining us, right? So we'll be able to put those questions to them. Any other questions from the Q&A, Caprice, before we wrap this up?
So just, we're trying to keep things to an hour. I don't know how everybody's schedule is, but next week is locations. We'll have all the film commissioners on. We'll have Maryland, Baltimore City, I think DC and Virginia. We'll have them all on to give us any kind of governmental updates. Would be awesome for us, and see how we go forward. So should I throw out some questions?
Sure.
I know we're not going to get to every one of them, and I'm sorry, we've got like 36 questions, but I'll just
We can answer them online too. We can take some time and answer the questions online.
Is everybody okay with time right now? Because we're coming up on 11:30. Are we all right? Okay, good. So I'll shoot a couple things, and they're going to be random because they were just coming in different things. So since testing is not 100% reliable or timely, backup crew on hold and paid for our, wait a minute. The question is about the backup crew, having them on hold in case someone were to call in and say, I'm not feeling well. Has any of the producers had to call in backups?
No.
Okay. I wish IATSE might, it'd be interesting to see if they might step up and put together a roster of backup people that, you know, I mean, it'd be a wonderful service they could offer just during this time of, if you're doing a shoot and you're doing it with a union crew, that they kind of help you, like Instacart, you know, like if you don't have this, if they don't have this brand, would you accept this replacement? It wouldn't be a bad idea for them to maybe help producers out, help clients out with having some backup people that have, been recently tested or have their medical, it's just a thought. It's kind of like.
One of the things we put out to clients right now was, the fact of putting a backup on hold, from a union perspective, depending on when you call that shoot, you're going to pay for the backup and for the person, whether or not they both show up on set. We've put that, and that's one of those additional costs we put to clients saying, look, if you only have talent for a certain period of time and you want to guarantee that we do the shoot on the day, you may want to invest in paying essentially, at least for keys, a double crew. So that if something happens, and look, I mean, I could have someone like hustling gear from their vehicle and I'm in Nevada, but I'm going to be shooting in California, and they could spike a little fever that has nothing related with all the COVID, but I can't put them on set to have someone backup. We have not had to put that in place. And again, it's been like, well, we'll think about it, but no one's pulled that trigger. It's not an insignificant cost at all.
The LA shoot that we've posted, this breakdown, the line producer said that hiring crew where people could do multiple jobs, even though, in our glory days, it was great to have a big crew and lots of specialists, that it was almost necessary for them to get the shoot done at this time.
Right.
Well, and I think on set, I'm sorry, Caprice. No, go ahead. Well,
No.
I mean, on set, we've had, from a union perspective, they're prescribed, crafts that you're covered. But I know that in the shoots we've done with the smaller crews, everyone realizes to get this done, we need to be helping each other. We're sometimes doing things we normally wouldn't do. Because people want to work too, and they realize that unless that happens, I mean, like John said it, crews are the greatest folks in the world. They want to be working and they're going to have to do it. When I started doing the research in February, the first set of guidance I got, at least, was AICP. And the reference to unions was their belief in the discussions they had that unions were going to work with us. And I've stayed in touch with Dave O'Farrell, and I'm saying, when something actually comes out that's concrete, let me know, because I want to know what the stance is. So far, I haven't, and he's been pretty upfront. He's like, we're following SAG-AFTRA. We don't have they don't have a lot that they're saying. So we're kind of making up our own guidelines. I mean, I look at how we handle lunch. It's strictly speaking, we're not doing lunch in a way that the union would normally do it, but we are doing it in a way that keeps our crew safe. And the way I'm doing it, right now, for most part, I am paying a per diem everywhere. I'm bringing no food, nothing that anyone shares on set. I talk to other producers, they're doing the same thing. Strictly speaking, that is not what is in the commercial contract, but I also, we're going with the fact that unions are working with, and so far we haven't had any pushback, and certainly not from crew members. I think most crew members are happy that we're trying to be safe, and but it's, these are the costs that we're having to put forward. I mean, like all of this stuff, and even like the clients that will show up on set, I'm like, by the way, there will not be a coffee run. It's just all of these things and they seem so small. And also, like, and I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent here, but compliance. The one thing I will say that I noticed on set, you go into set and everybody's like very vigilant, and the day goes on and people are comfortable, and they haven't seen these people they've worked with for years, and all of a sudden 6 feet becomes 5 feet, becomes 4, and you really have to keep pushing this. And we're telling clients, we can't hand you a script. We need to send everything electronically, the prompters, and it's stuff that is just second nature. All the things we're talking about are second nature. We're having to put a pause on all that and say, you got to stop. And all of this it's really very interesting. And I think it's going into 2021. I don't see any way at this point that we're not going to have this going into 2021. Even if we get a vaccine.
Yeah, it'll be a different normal.
It'll be a different normal.
Yeah. What else, Caprice? What else we have?
So I'm going to run through a couple of these things. What's the largest crew that's been used in the entire pandemic? I'm going to answer a couple of these things. We have all the previous webinars archived on DC Camera's YouTube page, where we did last week. We interviewed a production manager and a producer on 2 spots. Maura did the first TV commercial in New York City, in New York. And then also Amy Mayfield did 2 back-to-back shoots in Pittsburgh where their crew size was 35 to 45. So I would reference that to you because that was very, very informative. Is anyone using Medics? Absolutely. Let's see, we have some things about testing, but I think we went through those things.
Yeah, I think Medics are they're going to be the big part of all future shoots, and additional staff to Medics. I think that's going to be one of the hard costs that's going to get attached to almost every project, I think.
And I think that, you know, just with the producers, like we will have added costs, and I've been telling people and crew, look, if you know you need something more, let them know. They need to put it in their budgets. The postings are in the chat. So the Safe Sets International course, the Moab job, and the EP stuff is in the chat.
Yeah, I think you'll all find that very, very informative. So I guess we should wrap it up.
One other question for people that have work coming up, and it seemed like on the job that I just referenced, the 2 jobs, they did go with the AICP guidelines. That's what they're doing right now.
Yeah, a lot of people, I think, are still using those as the main point of reference till everybody gets their papers together. So I would like to thank our excellent panel, John Noble, Liz Norton, Lindsay Thomas, and Brian Hegedus. I personally have found it reassuring that during the shutdown, you know, work's going on, writers are writing, jobs are happening, producers are bidding, stuff is happening. So this is all in preparation. When they get back to work, we're going to be ready to get back to work. You know, I really want to thank you all for helping us, because we want to bring work to Maryland. And we just need to tackle some of these issues and keep each other informed about these things, so we can be educated when we talk to our clients. Okay?
Thank you, Mary. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.